Hi everyone, Kendall, and I'm from Worthing, and this is day tres of 100 Days of Codes, and also my third day of boot camp at School of Codes. So obviously, with relation to 100 Days of Codes, this is day three. I'm committing for 100 days to code continuously, consistently, every day for 100 days. And I'll be videoing my journey. I'll be talking about some of the things that I'm doing. I'm doing it collaboratively with School of Code. So School of Code is 16 weeks. And I'll be doing this 100 Days of Code video diary every day, charting sort of what I'm learning, sort of keep myself accountable publicly, and sort of sharing my journey, sharing my feelings and my thoughts about the day and what I've been learning, challenges, all those good things. So, if you didn't know, 100 Days of Code there's four rules to 100 Days of Code. So, number one, you code for 1 hour a day. Number two, you keep yourself accountable publicly, which I'm doing here. So this will be accountability for myself, but also accountability for my journey, so I can keep track of sort of where I'm going and what I've learned over this 100 days and maybe 16 weeks, whatever I choose to do. I don't know. See how it goes. And then you connect with the community of Twitter. So obviously I share each of these videos on Twitter, and I follow people and I share my journey with others. Maybe it'll inspire them. Maybe one or two will watch it and they'll feel inspired by it. But for anything, first and foremost, it's for me. I don't mean to be selfish, but it is kind of for me to sort of keep track of where I'm at, my learning, and see how far I've come after all this time. So it's exciting. It's a little bit extra work. Yeah, it's a little bit extra work, but hey, it'll be worth it in the end. Every little bit moves towards that end goal, and when you look back, there's a masterpiece or a lot of stuff that you've done that you can look back on. Maybe not a masterpiece. Maybe it's just pieces of stuff. But nevertheless, my learning will be there. And rule number 4 is to keep a daily log of the progress. So emotions, feelings, and that's what I'm doing here today, day number 3. So today was day 3 of School of Codes, which is an amazing boot camp with a diverse set of people from all age groups, all cultures, all sorts of people, which I'm one of them. And today we learned about JavaScript. So it was an intro to JavaScript. So we've been learning the last couple of days about HTML, about CSS, about all sorts of cool stuff, about problem-solving mindsets. And today was where we first sort of jumped into JavaScript. And we talked a little bit about things like, like the pillars of JavaScript, the 5 pillars of JavaScript. And you had things like expressions, you had statements, you had declarations, you had variables, and I can only think of 4 right now. There's expressions. Expression basically is anything you put into the console. So with relation to JavaScript, you put things into a console, sort of the environment that you put the JavaScript into, and you give JavaScript a value, and then it gives you back an answer. So for example, you might be, we've been using these dev tools, which you use in Chrome. So in Chrome, you go to the 3 dots on the right, drops down, more tools, and you're in developer tools. And in there, you have access to a console. You also get it in VS Code, where you have this sort of, I guess, this space where you can input an expression. You put something in, and basically, it gives you back an answer. So for example, if I put hello, that would be an expression, and then it would give me back hello. I put something in, and it gives me back an answer. I put in an expression, and then it just gives me back the answer again. Or maybe I put like console.log in brackets hello, and then it returns hello. We learned about sort of statements. So statements is sort of a set of instructions. We learned about declarations, where we define something new. We learned about variables. Variables sometimes referred to as buckets of information. So you might have them where you say, for example, you might say, let's number equal 1, right? Let number equal 1. And that would be a variable. Number would be the variable. So sometimes they're referred to as buckets of information. But we've been encouraged at School of Codes by Dr. Chris Mia to view when we see let number, that we see it more like a telescope. That let number is like a telescope pointing to that number. And because later on with, well, I'll talk about it in a second, but basically, whatever you define that as, it points that telescope at whatever number you've declared. So they're like a pointer. It's like a pointer rather than a bucket. And so you might say how to declare that variable is let my age, for example. The word let in that declaring of a variable, we were told, is a keyword in JavaScript. It tells the computer you're declaring a variable. So if you just put my age, you put let my age with nothing else, it's currently nowhere. There's nothing there. So you say let my age, but you haven't put anything, you haven't made it point to anything. So there's nothing you can see. There's nothing there. So it'll come back as undefined because there's been no definition to that variable. So the telescope is pointing nowhere. So anyways, you have to point the my age or the variable to something, to a value of some sort, whether that be a number or whether that be a string, which is sort of like where you put quotes and it's like a word. A string is like a word. You put in quotes, single quotes or double quotes, or something like that, right? And then we had, we had the equal symbol, right? Equals, right? You know, equals this. Except when you're declaring a variable, equals isn't called equals. We've been encouraged not to call it equals. It's actually the assignment operator. So when you say let my age equals, we think of it as equals because that's what we've been taught, but it actually is an assignment operator. So you're assigning that value to that variable to a value. So you're assigning my age to whatever your age is, right? 25 or 26 or whatever it is. So let's think. So basically you have on the left-hand side, you have the let my age, right? And that's the pointer. And to the right-hand side of the assignment operator, or the equals, must be an expression. It gives it a value. We also talked about things like reassigning, right? So what happens when you reassign? For example, my age. So reassigning is where you say, maybe you declared let my name equal quote unquote Chris, right? Well, reassigning, the next line, you might say my name equals quote Cristiano, unquote. So it points the telescope, or it points the view of the variable to a completely new value. And it's great. Another thing you can do is you can do something called updating, right? We learned about updating, where you take, you might say let my age and equals 31. And then updating would be you use my age, so you use the variable name, and you go my age equals my age plus 1. And so you use the value to update itself. Then we learned about functions. Functions. I love that word, function. Man, they used to have a song in the United States where I come from. It was conjunction, junction, what's your function? It always makes me think about it. I don't know why it's on kids' TV. It's a stupid thing, but it always makes I hear that word and it makes me think of that song. So forgive the song, forgive the cheesiness, but it goes conjunction, junction. What's your function? It's brilliant. So functions. Moving on. Functions. So we learned that functions, that there's some built-in functions we can just use. Like, for example, sorry. So with a function, let me just explain a function a little bit. So basically, a function is something where you put something into the function, and then there's a process that happens in the function, and there's an output from the function. So when you're using a function, you can you may not have to know the details, like what do we need to put in. All you need to know is what you put in and what comes out. So for example, if you use something like an alert, so alert is something where, like, maybe you you land on a page, and when you land on the page, it opens up and it says, what's your sign, right? One of the things we did is, like, in the thing that Chris demonstrated, is he loaded up a page, and the function that was built into JavaScript, he wrote alert and then brackets and then hello. So when he landed on the page, the function, as soon as he landed on the page, it came up with a pop-up box and it said hello. So or another one was when you landed on the page that he coded with JavaScript, the function was let sign equal prompt and then bracket what's your sign and bracket. And so all that did is, because if you just do the prompt, he spoke about, is it would give you a prompt of what's your sign, but then when you put in an answer, so it comes up with a box, and you would put in your answer, and then it would just float off into the ether. So by doing let sign equal, like let sign is the variable, right? We spoke about that before. You sort of are saying, okay, let sign, you like store this, point to this, whatever they put in the prompt, that is what I'm going to keep. All that sort of thing. So we learned about that. So it comes up, what's your sign, a little pop-up. You put in, for me it would be Pisces. You put in your sign, and then it stores that in sign, right? So we did lots of stuff like that. We talked about logic flow. So sort of things like if else statements. So there's a logical thing. So for example, if sign, so I put in my sign with the prompt, but maybe the logic flow says, a logic flow would be something like if sign equals Capricorn, then I'll console log that's great, right? So the logic flow means that if I put if this is true, if they put in Capricorn, then it will respond that's great. I input Capricorn and the output is that's great, right? Function. There's a logical flow to it. If I put in something else, so maybe I put in Scorpio, the console logs that's too bad. So it's sort of a logic flow. So everything about functions is to make things easier, right? It's to make things as dry as possible. Which I'm trying to remember what the drying means. I'm just going to do a quick Google. Oh, it's don't repeat yourself. I couldn't remember. So everything about coding and functions is about making sure you don't have to repeat yourself over and over again, right? It's to make the code cleaner and make it simpler. So we talked about dry. We talked about while conditions. So basically, it's another type of function that's built in. So you would say while my age is less than 25, then execute this code. And so as long as it's below 25, it will execute and it will repeat that same function, and it'll just keep doing what you told it to do, right? It's super cool. What else did we learn about? We learned about functions of making cheese toasties. So there'd be like function and make a cheese toasty, and then open brackets, and then a squiggly line brackets, and then you put all the steps of what it takes to make a cheese toasty. You define your recipe. For example, like you get 2 pieces of bread, you get some cheese, all those sort of things. And then you do return and then toasty, right? And at the time when in the function, when you put return, it then ends that function, and what it was going to do ends. And the way you do this thing called a function invocation, which basically once you have created a function, after that you can then drop this invocation. And so you'll, for example, the function's called make a cheese toasty. Outside of the function, if you want to recall it again or you want to re-put it out, then you would then do make a cheese toasty, and you'd put 2 brackets. It's very exciting stuff. If you're a coder, that is. So there's all that. So we learned about functions. We learned about parameters and arguments. So I know that if you're on the School of Code, you'll know exactly what I mean. All this stuff has been exciting and fun and such a joy. We've learned so much. But I will leave it there as far as what I learned today, because it was so much stuff. The intro was amazing. We did all these amazing assignments to sort of solidify our things, where we were given examples where we took stuff that we had learned in Scratch, and then we had to convert that into JavaScript. And we had to sort of create all these things. One of the projects was we had to sort of make a password, place where you can input a password, and if somebody put it in wrong 3 times, then obviously it would tell them, or if they put it in 1 time, then they could put it in again. There were all these sort of things we had to use these functions and these if conditions for. So it's been awesome. A lot of fun, lots of knowledge there. I know I've given you a lot today, but it's been absolutely epic. And roll on tomorrow. My thoughts about today, man, I am tired, really tired after all that. Man, my mind was like, right? Literally Googled everything today. As I've said before, I felt like that picture that they showed on day 1, Homer Simpson brain with like Googles all around it. I felt like my brain is filled with Google and technology and code, but I wouldn't have it any other way. It's been a joy. So that's thoughts and feelings. I still feel like I have a lot to learn, but I feel like things are clicking. I feel like I'm having a lot of aha moments where things are making sense, which is awesome. When things click, where you sort of like you're working at problems, you're breaking them down, and you're breaking the big problems into small problems, and you hit your head against the wall. You get frustrated at times, but working together has been awesome, and it's starting to click. And do I know everything, or do I get it all right, or am I ahead of everything? No. Do I mess up a lot? Yes. But we're going to stay humble. We're going to learn like a child. We're going to continue to keep that mindset, staying humble, breaking things down, and we're going to get there. So, anyways, that's day 3 of 100 Days of Code and day 3 of School of Code Bootcamp. Peace out, guys. All the love in the world. All my fellow boot campers, big up to all of you, and good luck on your journey. I hope to meet you soon. Take care.